31 people have been executed in Arkansas. Riley Dobie Noel, July 9, 2003, lethal injection. On June 4, 1995, Noel, along with Terry Carroll, Curtis Cochran, and Tracy Calloway, were driving around Little Rock, Arkansas, in Cochran's car while under the influence of drugs. They stopped at the home of Mary Husian because Noel suspected her daughter of being involved in a drive-by shooting that killed his brother. Calloway exited the car and accompanied Noel and Carol into the house. Once inside, Noel ordered Mary Husian's 3 children, 17-year-old Marcel Young, 10-year-old Malak Husian, and 12-year-old Mustafa Husian, to get down on the floor. Calloway later testified that she watched Noel shoot each of the children in the head, killing them. Meanwhile, a co-defendant attempted to shoot Mary Husian with a shotgun, but it jammed, allowing her to wrestle the weapon away. At trial, Noel testified in his own defense against the advice of his attorneys, denying that he had killed the children. The sentences for his accomplices varied. One received 20 years after testifying for the state, another was sentenced to life without parole, and the third received 132 years for the murders. Noel's last meal was fried chicken, mashed potatoes with gravy, hot rolls, a green garden salad with ranch dressing, and Kool-Aid and cookies. His last words were, "I want my family to know I love them. I want my kids to know I love Jesus." Charles Laverne Singleton, January 6, 2004, lethal injection. Mary Lou York was fatally stabbed in the neck on June 1, 1979, at York's grocery store in Hamburg, succumbing to blood loss from 2 wounds. A customer, Patty Franklin, saw her relative, Charles Singleton, enter the store around 7:30 p.m. Soon after, Patty heard York scream, "Patty, go get help. Charles Singleton is killing me." This prompted her to run for assistance. Another witness, Lenora Howard, saw Singleton leave the store and shortly afterward watched Mary Lou, visibly bleeding and crying, come to the front door. 19-year-old York, the store's owner, identified Singleton to the responding police and to medical personnel before she died. Singleton's last meal was cheeseburgers, fried eggplant, green tomatoes and sweet potatoes, baked beans, potato salad, donuts, and 2 vanilla milkshakes. His last statement, issued in writing, was an extensive and heavily religious tract. In it, he declared, "I am Charles Singleton, anointed by God, Victor Ra Hakim." He further wrote, "The blind think I'm playing a game. They deny me, refusing me existence. But everybody takes the place of another. You have taught me what you want done, and I will not let you down. God bless." Eric Randall Nance, November 28, 2005, lethal injection. Julie Heath's vehicle was located abandoned along Highway 270 to the west of Malvern. Approximately 1 week later, her body was discovered on a piece of rural land situated roughly 7.5 miles from where the car had been left. While the autopsy did not definitively establish the exact cause or manner of death, medical examiners determined that she had likely suffered trauma to the head, and defects observed in her clothing were consistent with a cutting wound. During the trial, Nance's brother and sister testified that although he initially denied having any involvement in the incident, Nance later admitted that he had accidentally caused Heath's death. He explained to them that her car had broken down on the road and that he had stopped to give her a ride. He stated that his work knife had slipped from his pocket, and as he moved to place it in the glove department, the victim began to kick him. In response, he raised his hands to protect him, during which the knife accidentally became lodged in her throat, resulting in her death. Despite Nance's explanation of these events as an accident, the jury ultimately did not accept this account as credible. Nance didn't offer a final statement. His last meal was a bacon cheeseburger, French fries, ice cream, and a Coke. Ladell Lee, April 20, 2017, lethal injection. In 1993, 26-year-old Deborah K. Reese was discovered dead inside her home in Jacksonville, Arkansas, having suffered a brutal and violent attack. Investigators determined that she had been strangled and viciously beaten with a small wooden bat, which had been given to her by her husband for her personal protection. The assault was extreme and left Reese with severe injuries consistent with multiple forceful blows. In the investigation that followed, several of Reese's neighbors reported seeing Lee in the vicinity of her home around the time of her death. These witnesses were able to identify him to law enforcement, and based on their accounts, officers located and arrested Lee less than an hour later. Reports indicate that during this time, he had spent some of the $300 that had been taken from Reese during the attack, further linking him to the crime. Lee was subsequently charged with first-degree murder, a capital offense under Arkansas law. Prosecutors alleged that he had used a tire thumper to strike Deborah Reese a total of 36 times, inflicting the fatal injuries that caused her death. Following a trial, a jury found Lee guilty of capital murder, and he was formally sentenced to death on October 16, 1995. The case was marked by the extreme violence of the attack, the eyewitness testimony that led to Lee's swift apprehension, and the jury's conviction, which reflected the severity of the crime. Following his charge in the murder of Deborah K. Reese, Lee became linked to additional criminal acts. He faced accusations of 3 essays and was ultimately convicted for 2, the 1991 essay of a Jacksonville woman and the 1990 essay of a Jacksonville teenager. Lee was also prosecuted for the November 1989 abduction, essay, and murder of Christine Lewis, a 22-year-old mother. Lewis had been taken from her home, essayed, strangled, and her body was later discovered inside the closet of an abandoned house. Lee's trial for Lewis's murder in 1994 ended in a mistrial when it was revealed that a juror was a convicted felon related to him. After Lee was convicted and sentenced to death for the murders of Reese, county prosecutors chose not to retry him for Lewis's killing. On September 21, 1995, Lee was convicted for the kidnapping and essay of a 17-year-old girl in Jacksonville, Arkansas. This had occurred on November 27, 1990. The victim testified that she had been home alone with her 3-year-old nephew and 3-month-old niece when Lee attacked her. He grabbed her from behind, struck her with an iron, forced her outside into a wooded area, and there he essayed her, choked her, and submerged her head in water until she lost consciousness. Upon regaining awareness, she was found lying in a ditch wearing only a bra and a t-shirt. She was taken to a hospital for examination, and DNA evidence confirmed Lee as the assailant with a probability of 1 in 83 million that someone else committed the crime. Lee received a 60-year prison sentence for this conviction. On October 19, 1995, Lee was convicted of the kidnapping, essay, and robbery of a 50-year-old woman on March 7, 1991. The victim, returning home from grocery shopping, was followed by Lee. When she tried to let him pass, Lee grabbed her by the neck and strangled her, causing her to drop her groceries. He then searched her purse for money, warned her to stay silent, dragged her behind the school building, bound her hands with her belt, covered her face with an apron, and essayed her. After leaving, her hands were still bound and her face covered. For this crime, Lee was sentenced to life imprisonment plus 150 years. During his capital murder trial, Lee's previous convictions were cited by prosecutors. The judge described him as a hunter whose victims were residents of Jacksonville between 1990 and 1993. Additionally, Lee remains a suspect in the 1991 murder of Carolyn Johnson, who was last seen with him that year. Lee was sentenced to death and placed on death row in 1995. Throughout much of his time there, he was confined to solitary conditions, experiencing very limited interaction with other people, which is standard practice for inmates on death row. Prior to his execution, Lee gave an interview to the BBC in which he stated, "My dying words will always be as they have been. I'm an innocent man." For his final meal, he chose to receive Holy Communion. He refused to make a final statement.